colonists' life? What was their life like? Let's put our first word here is going to be life. I need another new marker. Look in your story and tell me something about what life was like there.
Hard.
Okay. Are you looking at the story?
No. I just looking at it, but
yes.
That was hard.
There's a word, centered. Does anybody see that sentence that talks about how their life was centered? Okay. Somebody read that sentence. Hannah, can you read it?
In the Dominican colonies, life centered around the church and
religious beliefs. Is that important? Okay, yes. Okay. We know that church was important, okay, but then we also are getting into their religious beliefs. All right? So their actual life, their entire life, girls, over here, their entire life was centered around what? Besides church, we mentioned church in the top. We mentioned church up here, the word church. Hannah said religious beliefs. So what we can do here is we can abbreviate the word religious, and then we can write the word beliefs. Unless you have something else. You may want to draw a cross if that helps you remember religious beliefs, something like that. Okay? Life centered on religious beliefs. Okay, if this is our topic sentence and the last sentence is our clincher, what are these sentences in between? They're not our topic and they're not our clincher. Any ideas what those sentences are? What are we doing with these sentences in between? They're the details, right? They're the body of our paragraph. That's where we're getting into the nitty-gritty of what we're talking about in our topic sentence. We're giving some details to back up what we're saying in our topic sentence. So should all of our details back up the fact that church was important to them? Yes. Okay. All right. Tell me something about Sunday. Specifically, this story is letting us know what's going on Sunday. Not any other day of the week, just Sunday. Read through the story and come up with some ideas for me for Sundays that this specifically said about Sunday.
Everyone attended church?
They all attended. Everyone went. Okay? So how could we say that? Sunday, Evan, help. What else? Caleb, help.
Attended.
Okay. Who? You just said
colonists. It could be like C-O-L or O-N.
Okay, we know we're talking about colonists already, so we don't really need that in our keyword outline. But you said it just a minute ago. I think you said everyone. I'm going to put the word all. All. And then he said the word attended. Then when you write your sentence, you can write it however you want, as long as you remember you're writing something about letting your reader know that everyone went to church on Sunday. We all did it. Okay? So we know something about life in general, then Sundays. Okay, how about services? The actual services themselves. Services. What's a good word to describe their services? Someone said it earlier. Long. Long. Okay? And we have room for something else. Anything else anyone wants to put about the services being long?
Not fun.
Right? And they actually said 2 to 5 hours, which, what is this, if I write it this way?
Abbreviated.
Yeah, so does that even count? No, and we knew one other thing. Lucy, you said it wasn't that important, but we could add it in here if we want to. What else? Besides that a service or the sermon was 2 to 5 hours long.
There's a service in the morning and then
Right. Morning and evening, which I'm going to put AM and PM to remind me that they went in the morning and they also went in the evening. Okay, now the story gets into the description of the meeting house. It tells us a lot about what it looked like. Was that really important information to the fact that church was important to the colonists?
No.
Do you think right? If we were writing a really long 5-paragraph report about this, then yes, we would want to get into what the meeting house looked like and a lot more of those type of details. But we're not as into the description as we're into the main points about church being important to the colonists, okay? So after services, they described a man. Does anybody remember what he was called?
Watchman.
Mallory? The tithing man.
I would be the tithing man.
Okay, let's tell something. That's pretty interesting, isn't it?
When I call him a tithing man, he has nothing to do with tithe.
That's true. Well, in a way he does, because he exacts fines from people for different things. What's a fine?
So, you have to pay money because you did something wrong.
Exactly. It means they had to give money for smiling and what else?
Whispering.
Whispering and smiling. You could have to pay money.
That's so weird. I bet that feels like $5.
Okay, what did the tithing man have with him? You have a picture of it, I think, on your page.
A church stick.
Okay, was it called a church stick?
Yeah.
Church stick. Okay. I'm going to say stick, and then if you want to write a cross or draw a little picture of a church in front of it, something like that, to remind yourself that it was called that. He had a stick, you could call it a rod, something like that. And what did he go around doing during church? While everyone else was focused on the sermon and watching the pastor, what's the tithing man doing?
Watching.
He's watching. What could we do to show watching?
2 eyeballs.
Eyes. Eyeballs glaring.
He would probably be the worst man that didn't look at the service.
You think that children were excited when they saw the tithing man at church? He sounds a little bit scary, right? So his eyes are on everyone, children and adults. He's watching them. Okay, let's talk about children, since we brought up children. Tell me something about the children. They got bopped on the head.
Isn't that the parents' job?
Yeah, isn't that the parents' job?
Well, maybe not back then. Okay, so if children someone said this word just a second ago, misbehave. If they misbehave, you could say disobeyed, something like that. They got a bop. And if you want to draw a picture of a head, that would be great, but I bet you can remember that they got bopped on the head. I have a funny story about that. My dad, who did not live during colonial times, has always been known as someone in church who thumps kids on the head that sit in front of him. So I think this story is kind of funny because it reminds me of my dad.
He bumped people in the head?
Thump, like this.
Why did you do
like
that?
Thumping. Just like if kids were sitting in front of him talking during the sermon and things like that, he'd just give them a little bop on the head, a little thump on the head, not a bop. Isn't that funny? Okay, so we know that children get a bop on the head. What about adults? Shouldn't they get worse if they're misbehaving in church?
Yeah.
But what happens to the adults?
Tickled.
They get tickled. Maybe they don't like being tickled back then? I don't know. Okay,
Maybe
so
tickle is like a sin.
we're going to write adults now. Okay? And what do the adults have to do to get tickled? To get it? When they fall asleep. Why would they fall asleep? I can't imagine.
I fall asleep.
Because it was so long.
Such a long time to sit there, right? Okay?
I would fall asleep.
And what was it called? What was the end of the stick called where the adults got tickled with the foxtail? So you could write the word foxtail if you want, or you can write tickled if you want. If you think you can remember that it was a foxtail. We're not used to the word foxtail, so you might want to write that one down. So if adults fell asleep, they got tickled with the foxtail. Do you think that would wake them up?
I just hit the balloon.
Okay.
Until you touch me on the key.
When they say foxtail, what do you think they're really talking about? Look at the picture. It really is a foxtail. You understand that, right? They've actually taken the tail of a fox and attached it to the end of a rod. So they really are talking about a foxtail. That's not just a name for something. Okay, and then there was one other thing that happened that we talked about that word earlier when you had to pay money. What did you have to do for the tithing man to turn you in and you had to pay a fine? For doing what in church?
Smiling.
Whispering and what? If you whispered or what? Someone else. Or smile. There's no smiling in church, people. Don't smile in church. If you whispered or smiled, you had to do what? Pay a fine. You can write fine. You could draw money, a money symbol. You could write the word pay and then write a money symbol if that helps you remember what a fine is.
I know what a fine is.